are all seeking connection to each other, to the world, to the spaces we exist in.
Seems like poor sportsmanship right now from the lad.
Here and you're on time and you heard my bell and you respected it. That's why I want to honor you by starting with as few as you are. I'm not moved by majority. I'm not moved. Yeah, Patrick, call them. Okay. I really want to send you home as we plan, okay? I don't want to go 1 minute over, and this is why I just need to start. We're starting with session 4, and it's our last session, and then we have the closing session, basically just one person who is going to send us home. And please remember that your name tag has got a QR bar queue where the evaluation is. Would like to have that evaluation. Please just go there and access that evaluation survey and give us your feedback before you go home. All right, we've got 2 speakers who are focusing on institutional and governance framework and funding mechanism for agroforestry. We've got Patrick, whom I'm going to introduce now, and Mr. Oliver Christian. Oliver, he's going to be talking on the funding opportunity. So those are our 2 last speakers before we close the session. So quickly, is Patrick here? Let me quickly introduce you. He's a senior science policy advisor at it's an abbreviation which is CIFOR, ICRAF. He will tell you what all of that means. And he's the president of the IUA. Now, I think the center, the CIFOR is the Center of International Forestry Research and World Agroforestry. And the IUA is the International Union of Agroforestry, and he's based in Belgium. So, as I've said already, he is a senior advisor or senior scientist, the world's only global institution devoted to study of trees in agriculture landscape. That organization he represents. Patrick's work sits at the nukes of land restoration and human security. He is convinced that marrying traditional and advanced knowledge is the most promising pathway to rural prosperity, a giant help to mitigate our impact on biodiversity and the atmosphere, and tantalizingly, peace in a warming world. Help me welcome Patrick, who's going to talk about policy as snake and ladders, how agroforestry is promoted or hampered around the world. Patrick.
To oneself. Can we have the light down, please, so people can actually look at my slides? Thank you.
20 minutes.
Seriously? I'll take at least 40. Now, IUAF, president of the International Union of Agroforestry. I'm the senior science policy advisor for CIFOR-ICRAF, and that means I work on projects, and that's what pays the bills. I'm a senior fellow of the European Agroforestry Federation, which I built into an institution that's had a measurable impact on European policy. And I'm a trustee of the Savannah Institute, which is an extraordinary body doing agroforestry in the American Midwest. I like trees, and I have a nice family that loves smiling with me. So the International Union of Agroforestry, no details but a QR code. Pull out your phones, I'm waiting. Because that will get you to our website, and there is that wonderful little button called Join Now at the top right. And since you're interested in agroforestry, I expect you all to click on that button and to register as an agroforester. Is that okay? Are we done? Can we go to the next slide? Wait. Here's a second QR code. And this one is for the World Congress on Agroforestry. It will take place here in Africa, in Kigali, Rwanda, in May of next year. Typically, it's 1,000 to 1,500 people coming from around the world to discuss agroforestry, and I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible from this room in Kigali next May. Now, I'm a subscriber to the Financial Times, and the scariest graphic I ever found in that newspaper was published in 2019. It's a logarithmic scale that shows the CO2 emissions by selected countries. And yes, where's the laser on this thing? No, that's not the laser. No, that's it. Okay, I pressed the wrong button. Can I go back to my presentation, please? Technicians? Almost. I was here. And there was a button. Is that a button? Yeah. So all of these countries are Belgium, the US, Germany, and whatever you have. And here you have the rising economies of China and so on. It's a logarithmic scale. So whenever the color changes, you have 10 times more carbon emissions. But here on the right, you have countries like Namibia and countries around Africa. And what this chart shows is that we all got into carbon big time. Because carbon, man, whew, it's better than drugs. It's better than sex. It's everything. It's the electronics, it's the building that we are in, it's the plane that brought me over, it's the food that's on your table, it's the clothes on your back. Everything is made with fossil fuels. And that is a bit of a disaster, as we all know. But there is good news. The first good news is that we've actually been engineering the climate for the last 10,000 years or so, about 8,000 years. When we started with agriculture, agriculture meant cutting down forests in the Middle East and Europe. And it meant wet rice cultivation in Asia and Southeast Asia. And that meant rising carbon emissions and rising methane emissions, coincidentally, just enough to compensate the cooling climate that astronomical factors would indicate. Normally, we should have been slipping into the next ice age, but thanks to those emissions, we got the extraordinarily stable climate that we call the Holocene, but that I call the Anthropocene. It started 8,000 years ago. The problem, of course, is today it's much more than that. The second problem, and that brings us here today, is agriculture. Agriculture is about 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions. It's half of global employment. It's 2/3 of global land use, and it's 3/4 of global freshwater use. Now, you would imagine that that giant industry would generate an enormous amount of money, right? Wrong. It's less than 5% of global GDP. And that's because the 50% that work from agriculture look like this. It's a hard life being a farmer. 99% of farmers are smallholders, and they work long hours under the hot sun to scratch a bare survival out of an unforgiving soil. That's what we're here to fix. And we can fix this. And fixing this requires only 2 tools: the management of trees and the management of livestock, and sometimes the management of livestock in trees. Now, once you start looking at the world through those tools, you realize that all good farming systems, no matter where you are on the planet, fall into 4 classes. You've got the silvopastoral systems, trees with animals. And clockwise from top left, you have examples from Poland, from Finland, from Burkina Faso, and from Portugal. Very different ecosystems, very different climates, but always the same principles. You then have the silvo-arable systems. Again, from top left, you have examples from Zambia, from England, from Sri Lanka, and from France. Crops under trees. The Sri Lankan example is amusing because the crop is actually the tall bit, the coconuts, and the agroforestry component are the gliricidia in between, which provide fertility to the coconuts. The third systems are the best systems, the polycultures. And Hanya, what you're doing there resembles a polyculture more than anything else. It's when you mix the crops and the animals and the trees and the shrubs and the lianas and whatever else you can think of together. Again, from top left, you have examples from Tanzania, from Brazil, from New York State, and from Uganda. They are the best systems, but they are the most difficult to bring to scale because they are the most difficult to bring to scale in financial terms. When you have 2 hectares and you produce 30 different products, it's difficult to find buyers. And finally, there is a 4th system, which I'm not going to talk about here, which is grassland management. which is so crucially important here in Namibia, but I was told to focus on policy rather than grasses, so I will leave my love for grasslands behind us. We already heard how trees help, but the secret of communication is 3 words: repetition, repetition, and repetition. So I'll repeat it again. Trees help because they cycle nutrients. Their deep roots bring nutrients up to the surface in the form of branches and leaves, and when these fall onto the soil surface, these nutrients can become available to crops. Trees buffer the water cycle. When you have a rainstorm, the tree acts like a rain-catching device that brings the water into the ground. When you have a drought, the tree acts as a microclimate device, reducing temperatures, reducing evapotranspiration of your crops. In both cases, you help your crops to grow. Trees benefit from being planted with crops. This is an experiment from Restin-Clière in southwest France, and it's an alley cropping system of walnuts and wheat. So on the right, you have the agroforestry system. On the left, you have the forestry system. And what you see is the amount of roots and rootlets by depth on these 2 systems. You immediately notice that there's a lot more roots close to the surface in the forestry system. In the agroforestry system, the roots are lower. So when you have a drought, in your forestry system, the tree stops growing. In your agroforestry system, most of the roots still get water and nutrients. They go, haha, I don't care, I will keep on growing. You have reduced nitrogen leaching. If you're a commercial farmer and you use a lot of inorganic nitrogen, this is useful because you pollute your water sources a lot less. You have a lot more biodiversity in agroforestry system. And interestingly enough, that biodiversity is positive. It's not just the pests that love the agroforestry system, it's the antagonists of pests. And that's why in agroforestry system you often have fewer problems with disease than you do in pure monocrop systems. And of course, trees cool the soil. And a cool soil is a healthier soil. A bare soil is a dead soil. Trees help water recharge, useful in dryland climates like Namibia. This is work colleagues did and published back in 2016 that show you that you have the maximum water recharge with a distributed tree cover like a parkland or a savanna. In a forest, most of the water evaporates again. In a dry land without any ground cover, most of the water runs off. And that's why what we call the land equivalency ratio, the amount of land that you would need to produce the same amount as 1 hectare of agroforestry by segregating things into cropland and forestry land, is almost always higher than 1. In this theoretical example, it's 1.4, and that's typically what you can achieve in temperate systems in Europe. That's why all the best systems involve trees. This is an old chart, and it looks at everything that you can do to increase maize production in southern Africa. And the things that work best in terms of production, resilience, and mitigation, they involve the trees. Don't just take my word for it. Look at the IPCC reports. The IPCC too has come to the conclusion with high confidence that agroecology is the best way of getting all the nice things we all want. And it comes to the conclusion that if you want to increase productivity, mitigation, adaptation, desertification, land degradation, and food security, and do it at low cost, then the best things you can do is agroforestry and improved grazing management. All right. I hope I've convinced you. Raise your hands if I've convinced you that agroforestry is great. Then, why does the world look like that more and more? I wish I was in the agri-chemicals business. You make so much money in agrochemicals. Almost every farmer in the world buys your poisons, and they spread it liberally. Whereas we, the agroecologists and the agroforesters, we make a tiny amount of money, usually by begging. You're all beggars here, right? I'm a beggar. I mean, I depend on grants. Lara, you depend on grants. We all depend on grants because we don't have a business model. That means that we don't have a lot of money for research, for marketing, or for political influence. And that means that we don't get together. Those of us who promote these systems must build and develop our own brands. And that's why you have so many of these different words for things that basically all mean mix things up and think before you spray. Then we've all been programmed with bullshit. Left? You're very generous, thank you. We've all been programmed with bullshit. This is a picture that comes from the website of a seed company. And it's supposed to tell you that buying those particular wheat seeds is going to lead you to lots of money. But this is a picture taken in Europe in late summer, so June, July. 16 hours of daylight, and there's no photosynthesis. There's rain in Europe in summer, and that water is not used by plants. This is not a productive farming system, it's a desert. At least in this environment, photosynthesis continues and water keeps on getting used, even as you're harvesting your winter crops. The second problem that we have is that we are clever apes, but only slightly clever apes. We can't deal with complexity very well, especially at policy level. So we divide things into these boxes. We've got a Ministry of Environment, a Ministry of Climate Change, a Ministry of Agriculture, a Ministry of Finance, a Ministry of Rural Development, and what have you. The real world, of course, has all of these things mixed together, happily exchanging water, nutrients, genomes, and what have you. And then we all love progress. This is a picture of Birmingham in the late 1930s. Everything is mixed up in there. The factories, the schools, the housing, the markets. You can see what a thriving landscape it is. This is the same city 30 years later. The factories are over here. The housing is over there. The university is over here. And it's all connected by beautiful motorways on which beautiful motor cars are taking you from A to B. No prizes for guessing what has higher emissions. And that affects everything and everybody, not just the capitalist world. This is a picture from the Soviet Union. It's a picture about agriculture, about the 7-year plan for more agriculture. There's no green in that picture. There is a fertilizer plant in the background and a proud army of 1 million tractors marching to a glorious future. And that has had a serious impact. When we discovered the extraordinary tools of fertilizers, pesticides, and diesel, and started applying them to agriculture from the 1930s onwards, it was like we received a miraculous gift at Christmas. You have a pest? Psst, psst, gone. Your plant is suffering, it's a bit nitrogen deficient, put some of that inorganic stuff on it and see it thrive. We love that stuff. And we forgot how to do things the old way. We forgot that this stuff is great, but it has side effects. Negative side effects, serious side effects, the kind of side effects that got you into this room today. But still, the world loves this stuff. Right now, it's buying around $300 billion worth of agrochemicals every year. That's a shitload of money, especially when you know how that industry works. About half of that money is going to be spent on promotion, on marketing, on convincing you that getting the new pesticide is going to be better than the old pesticide, even if it's more expensive. And you get an app on your phone that tells you exactly what to spray when. And of course, he who pays the piper calls the tune. So the debate about agriculture is dominated by these companies. And that's the reason why you don't have anyone from the Ministry of Agriculture here, except for somebody who was clever enough to resign from it 3 months ago. And then you have bullshit arguments. We must feed the world. We've all heard this, right? We need to produce 70% more food by 2050 to feed a growing population. How do we feed the world? We must grow calorie production. Forget nutrients. We just need more calories. So how do we do that? We breed input-responsive crops and specialized livestock breeds. And these can only be used by big commercial farmers who know what they're doing, right? So we tell the small farmers, get big or get out. And so we subsidize these big farmers. We subsidize these companies that produce a limited range of commodities that get turned into the food you find in your supermarkets, and that influences the political discourse. But policy and governance can help. This is the kind of view you see out of your airplane window when you crossed across southern Russia on your way to India from Europe. You can't do that anymore because of the war, but it still looks that way. These are the windbreaks that were planted by the Soviet Union across Ukraine and across southern Russia to reduce wind speeds, reduce evapotranspiration, and increase the protein content of wheat fields. That's governance. But it can be an ally or an enemy. In Ivory Coast, it was an enemy. Ivory Coast is the world champion at tropical deforestation. Forget Brazil or Indonesia. Ivory Coast managed to get rid of all of its tropical rainforest except for a few national parks in 15 years flat. Wow. Congratulations, Ivory Coast. Why? Because in Ivory Coast, a native tree belongs to the forestry department, whereas an exotic tree belongs to you. Which means that if you're a farmer and you see a native tree coming back, you get rid of it as quickly as possible, because if you let it grow and it becomes this nice, big, tall thing worth millions, well, not millions, but thousands of dollars, the forestry department's going to come in and harvest it, damaging your field in the process, not compensating you in order to sell it. So you have a strong inducement to get rid of your native trees in that environment. Ghana, sadly, is following the same suite. What you see here is a satellite picture of southern Ghana, and it looks a little bit like a golf course. I know the light's really bad, but you can see these greener areas. Those are the forest reserves that are left. Everywhere else, because of similar legislation, farmers have extirpated their trees. But if you change that, miracles start happening. And the best example of that is Niger. Niger changed the way that it regulated the trees that were growing on farmers' fields, and the trees came back. The farmers are not stupid, they know that the trees help, but you've got to give them an environment in which they can make it happen. That's what Zinder looked in the 1980s when they had massive famines there. That's what Zinder looks like today. It's filled with Phytoherbia albida trees, fertilizer trees that provide a microclimate and nutrients to your crops. And the best guess we have is that there's about 10 million hectares of this now, and that they're yielding at least 1 million tons extra of sorghum and millet than before. That's what these landscapes look like from the 5 minutes only. 3. All right, I better speed on then. Tigray looked like this. You've all heard the song, Do They Know It's Christmas? That was written to raise money to help the people who suffered the famine in this lunar landscape of rocks and sand without a single blade of grass left. That's what the exact same environment looked like in 2019 when I was there. Again, Phytoherbia trees. Notice the fields, they are plowed, and notice the regular plowing lines. They're plowed by oxen, not by hand. When you're in the villages, the kids were on their phones, and there were motorbikes and cars. The place had developed because it restored their landscape. How did it restore its landscape? Because the Ethiopian government was super clever. It told the farmers, you have to pay your taxes. And the farmer said, but I'm poor, I don't have any money. What should I do? Okay, you can pay your taxes in labor. You have to work for 15 days on a project in the agricultural off-season. But what should we work on? Oh, well, that's for you to decide. You as the community. So the community sat down, and with the help of Mekelle University, Mekelle is the capital of Tigray, and to me, one of the best land restoration universities on the planet, with the help of people from that university, they went through their options. At first, everybody wants the road to go to market. But you don't have anything to bring to market. Your land is degraded. Oh, well, yes. Let's build terraces. But you have no water. What are you going to grow in these terraces? Oh, well, yes. Let's start by getting the water back. How can we get the water back? Here's an example, check dams. It doesn't stop the water, it slows the water down. So the sediments stay there. The water stays there and recharges the aquifers. The wrong example exists too. This guy should be Dr. Evil in a James Bond film. He is a captain of the Eaux et Forêts in Senegal, who I had the displeasure of meeting a few years ago, and that's one of his 2 young, pretty assistants. And what he was doing was telling the farmers that they needed to respect the law to cut their trees. In Senegal, that means 4 signatures: the village chief, the mayor, this guy, and the Ministry of Finance, before you're allowed to legally cut your tree. In that environment, trees are trouble, and they disappear. Then you have a problem of definition. I spoke earlier on the panel about silvo-arable and silvo-pastoral, but you can divide agroforestry, you can slice the agroforestry cake in as many pieces as you like, and this is an example from Europe. This is an example from the US, and this is what happens in the Common Agricultural Policy. Each of these boxes represents the definition of what constitutes agroforestry in one member state of the European Union, and that's just a box. Behind that box is hundreds of pages of detailed regulation. That is not something that helps agroforestry to spread. In Namibia, you've got 2 broad land classes: titled land deed, where you have no proper incentives, and communal land, where you have government input subsidies, but you do not really have the support that people need to do agroforestry or conservation agriculture. In Zambia, they spend most of their money on the fertilizer input subsidy program. Doesn't matter that Zambian soils are so acidic that most of that fertilizer ends up as nitrous oxide, a really powerful greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. That's what they do. So, as you're going to tell me I have 30 seconds left or thereabouts, I'm going to almost leave it here and say that the last thing that we have to remember is that we have been programmed to believe that there's only two sorts of ways of managing land: private land and government land. In fact, what Elinor Ostrom, the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in Economics, showed is that by far the best way of managing a natural resource, whether it's pasture land, a fishery, or even the electromagnetic spectrum that mobile phone companies need to share between themselves, is to have community management. And I warmly invite you to Google her and to look at some videos or to read some of her papers to understand the sheer power of that. And that's powerful in Namibia, because you have communal land, you have community groups, you already have the basic infrastructure to make this work at scale. Finally, we have to remember that people have aspirations. Nobody wants to be a smallholder farmer. Nobody wants their children to be a smallholder farmer. Everybody wants to see their children progress. And we also have to remember that we, the development community, are really lousy at communications. This comes from the report of a major donor, and it's supposed to show how wonderful they were in changing farming in Rwanda. All I see is a picture that tells me, thanks to the project, I now carry a heavy load on my head, but with a big smile. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. And that leaves us with our last presenter for the day. His name is Mr. Christian Olivier. Quickly about him, he's an agricultural specialist at Bank Windhoek, Namibia. Christian graduated from Stellenbosch University with a BA degree in agriculture, and he's got also a diploma in PJ in agronomy. He started his career as an agriculture graduate at Standard Bank, Namibia, where after he joined Bank Windhoek as an agricultural specialist. Please welcome Christian Olivier. He's going to speak about the private sector funding opportunities for agroforestry. Bank Windhoek.
Good morning, all attendees, fellow speakers, and esteemed guests. I thank you all for staying until the end of the conference. I know it's a bit late already, but yes, so without further ado, as introduced earlier, my name is Christian Olivier, and I'm the agricultural specialist at Bank Windhoek in the business banking department. I'll be speaking to private sector funding opportunities for agroforestry. And I'd just like to point out that I'm actually doing this presentation on behalf of my colleague, Joachim, who is the Sustainability, Finance and ESG Analyst. So I'll just start off with a short introduction of Bank Windhoek. Bank Windhoek is a commercial bank that offers financial services to the Namibian population. We are also the only wholly Namibian-owned bank which speaks to the local content and our drive to continuously innovate. We are also one of the biggest commercial banks in the country, and those of you that did not know, we are a subsidiary of the Capricorn Group, so we are family with the Capricorn Foundation under one group, which is the Capricorn Group. And Bank Windhoek has a countrywide representation which allows access to financial services to all Namibians across the country. And this is done through our vast branch network that spreads across the country. So one of Bank Windhoek's focus areas is sustainable finance, of which agroforestry does form a part of. And sustainable finance has actually been our priority in terms of sustainability, where we can leverage our mandate as a financial service provider. So we create opportunities or offerings that speak to driving sustainability. And sustainable finance for Bank Windhoek was one of the low-hanging fruits as it relates to sustainability due to Bank Windhoek or being the financial service provider. So I would just like to, in short, define what sustainable finance is. And it's basically that we want to focus or direct funding towards projects that contribute positively to the environment and society to create a sustainable economy. So how do financial services approach sustainability? This is done by creating financial products that specifically focus on creating impact in sustainable development and climate action, such as your thematic bonds or sustainability loans. This brings me to the sustainability loan of Bank Windhoek, which is an offering that is open to all qualifying projects that have an inherent environmental or social benefit. So within the sustainability loan of Bank Windhoek, there are certain thresholds. For individuals, they can access up to 500,000, and SMEs can access up to 1.5 million. So this offering was actually to assign a few benefits within our capacity as a private sector commercial bank. So, for example, the no deposit requirement, which actually eases access to funding for these types of projects. So our journey of sustainable finance started with the SUNREF program, which is a program that was financed by the French Development Agency, and it offered a credit line to some of the commercial banks within Namibia, of which Bank Windhoek was one of the chosen banks. So this credit line also came with a technical assistance facility that capacitated us as Bank Windhoek to look at sustainable projects in a different way. So in the past, we did not really have appetite, if you can call it that, for these types of projects, the same way that we do have now. So we look at it more differently. And based on this experience, we searched for opportunities within our mandate as a local financier to mobilize funding within the country as opposed to waiting for financing or funding from outside. And this led to the issuance of the green bond in 2018. And this was a real proud moment for Bank Windhoek, as it was the first green bond that was issued from a commercial bank in Southern Africa. So this was a real proud moment for us, and yes, so which also shows our commitment to the sustainability. This was followed by the sustainability bond issuance in 2021, and this was then further expanded with the launch of the sustainability loan in 2023. And for the future, we feel that it's about leveraging on more opportunities in terms of mobilizing funding and how we can actually apply it where it really matters. So the column on this side provides us with the conventional instruments that's available to projects or available to businesses, and we investigated to see how we can use these existing instruments to enable projects that have a environmental or social benefit to also tap into these same instruments. And this is when the sustainability loan came about, which I spoke to earlier. Here's just a short definition of agroforestry. It actually brings us to the subject matter, which is speaking to finance opportunities for agroforestry. And I don't think I will bore you with another definition. I believe the previous speakers covered it, and I believe we have a thorough understanding of what agroforestry is. So, we will now look at agroforestry and finance. So if we look at agroforestry, there are inherently certain risks that are associated with it compared to conventional agriculture, even though it is more beneficial than conventional agriculture or sustainable, as we've heard from the earlier speakers. So too, conventional agriculture also focuses more on the bankability of a project. So the first question that would usually come up is this project financially feasible? Is it financially viable? And then you would also look at the farmer. You'd ask the farmer, or try to evaluate if this farmer will be able to actually grow the crop or use the system that he's intending to use. And does he actually have the technical ability to be able to produce a quality crop that he can market at the end of the day, or beef or whatever produce he's into? So those are the typical things you'd also look at. And also another one would be to ask if they have like a reliable off-taker also, because it does not help you produce a quality product but do not have an off-taker, as was mentioned earlier with the broccolis. So that's also an important aspect to take into account. And then also, will you be able to produce enough to actually meet your financial obligations at the end of the day and make a profit for yourself to make a living from as well? So yes, as I mentioned, these are some of the typical points you'd look at for conventional agriculture, and the same would apply for agroforestry as well. If we look at agroforestry, as I mentioned, there's some challenges as compared to conventional agriculture, and one of these are the scalability of agroforestry projects. So because there's a nature element incorporated within the practice, it's difficult to clear large tracts of land to be able to plant as per conventional agriculture. So this then also would bring the question up to mind as to the economies of scale and the competitiveness of these type of projects as compared to convention. So conventional agriculture also makes use to demonstrate how you would bypass or overcome these certain challenges that does face agroforestry, as you would with any other project if you would like funding to be a part of that. So how do we see the future in terms of financing in sustainable finance? So it brings the question to mind again, how do we mitigate or find solutions to these challenges that inherently come with projects that have a beneficial impact on the environment and society in general? If we take agroforestry, for example, the challenges include cost of capital. It's still fairly an unknown practice in Namibia, even even though, as we heard earlier, it's a relatively old practice, there are specific inputs and risks, as mentioned earlier, and then there's also the security or collateral component that comes into the challenges. So for us, we think that with these challenges that we face, we see the future as a blended solution, or yes, for the future. So it would be a blended solution. So what would a blended solution entail? This would include leveraging on grants, commercial capital, concessional capital, to create structured solutions that can mitigate these challenges that are associated with these types of projects, such as agroforestry. And you can also then incorporate the technical assistance to further mitigate these challenges. And this brings us to the end of the presentation. I'd just like to leave you all with the slogan for the sustainability loan of Bank Windhoek: a better future tomorrow, today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. I would like to open up for questions and comments on the two presentations. One from Patrick and the other one from Christian. Do we have the mics ready? I've got two hands on this side, and how many here? One for now. Oh, and then another one in the middle. No, he's give to the question. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Patrick, I have a question for you that is actually concerning my project as well. I'm always asking myself, we are growing our crops biologically. So we don't use Roundup or, I forgot the name, you know what I mean, the pesticides. And I'm asking myself, I'm talking now about me as a European, for example, we came to a certain wealth where we say, now I'm paying attention to my health, I'm aware of the risks, but now I'm looking at the average farmer in Congo that makes money. Our farmers in our project, they make money, but I'm not talking about the same wealth that, for example, we have in Europe. So are we not in a certain way denying them a higher production because we are having standards that we only have because we were using the fertilizers or other techniques in the past, so we could build all that wealth, and now we're denying it to others who could make just more money that way.
Okay. Next, your question? Yes.
So, are we gonna do all the questions at once and then all the answers again? Oh, yeah. Okay. I have a question that's kind of for both parties. So, on the beginning, when I set out on this journey, the one big issue that I had was numbers. Because if you want to implement something like this, you need to know how much yield are you going to have, how much inputs does this require, how much labor cost do you have. And you were talking about bankability. So what commercial modern agriculture has is they have recipes, right? You input this and this, you see this, and you get this out. If you had these types of recipes for agroforestry, would that make it more bankable, is kind of what I'm saying? And to Patrick, I want to ask, if you had these types of recipes for some agroforestry models, would that help with policy creation? Because creating policies, you said, is one of the major limiting factors on agroforestry. So, yeah, that's my question. That made sense.
Okay. Would you want to, or can I take more questions, Patrick, or do you want to? Okay. I wanted one more on this side. Was it you? Okay. There's a hand there, and I notice your hand. Yes, I do notice your hand.
Well, good late afternoon. All protocols observed. It is an honor to be among such a diverse and knowledgeable group of individuals.
If you don't ask your question, I'm going to take the mic away from you.
Okay. Allow me to sincerely apologize. I've been raising my hand for the longest time now. So in order for me to put my question through, in as much as we are considering time, I need to set a bit of foundation, unless then it's pointless. So if you'd allow me, through the Director of Proceedings, of course, my name is Johannes Malapi. I am a student, postgraduate student at the Namibia University of Science and Technology. I'm here with a few of my colleagues from the Student Union of Namibia. So I'm a youth activist, advocate, one that is highly keen about environmental sustainability. Having said that, I'm also the founder of Yamalapi Eco Innovations.
Please ask your question.
Which is a recycling company operating in the waste management industry. So in the interest of time, I would like to pose my question to say,
Thank you.
Now, given today's discussion on agroforestry and its importance for climate resilience and transforming food systems, my question is, how can agroforestry practices contribute to addressing the issues of non-decomposable waste, like glass, which negatively impacts soil and water quality? Moreover, what opportunities exist for collaboration between the recycling industry and agroforestry to create sustainable land use solutions and also help mitigate environmental degradation activities? I so submit.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry that I'm stopping you. It's
It's
just that I need to really take time into consideration.
No problem, thank you.
Okay, good. I want the gentleman here and then the gentleman there so that we can just give people to answer. Yeah?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. My first question is on the promotion of this agroforestry practice. So I think there are people who hold the view that the green revolution was also marketed and promoted in the same way, and it's now we are realizing the impact of it. So what do we say to those who hold the view that the same, this technology or idea of agroforestry might have a consequence which we might not foresee now in 20 years' time or years to come? Another question is on the issue of climate change, heavily hitting on the continent of Africa, and we are trying to see how do we solve that. Is it the issue of food insecurity, mainly on this issue of food production and the practices which we are carrying out now, or there are maybe more complex problem which we might not be able to tackle, and it becomes we are working on symptom than the root cause? Thank you.
The last question in this round, the gentleman here, hello, the gentleman here in blue. Yeah, this. While he's taking the mic, I would like to get more hands from women so I can give them a chance.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a client of Bank Windhoek and I'm an agronomist as well. And this is more a comment than a question. You posed questions of profitability in agroforestry because there would be some natural components. All those natural components are functional. They reduce cost in operations massively. Keep your money on the farm, don't send it to town, is the slogan. Second, they can all produce a marketable commodity. And the diversity as such is stabilizing the entire system, including its economics. You are less exposed to risks. This is exactly what shows me what Patrick also alluded to is we really need to better understand complexities of nature and how we utilize them. Your approach is a very boring economist one, I'm sorry to say. But the stabilization, the increased resilience will have economic impact. We produce more crop than any conventional farmer in our system. The quantities are double to triple of what we harvest from our area in comparison to any monoculture, high-intensity agriculture. For maize, it's double, without fertilizer, without pesticides.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, Peter, you can take the mic and maybe start with you, and then I'll give to Christian to...
Thank you for these questions. Inputs as the key to wealth. Well, we're agnostic on inputs. There are times when you really the easiest solution is fertilizer or pesticides, right? We don't dictate organic. Agroforestry does not need to be organic. But agroforestry always makes sense. Agroforestry adds commodity, it adds resilience, it adds ecosystem services. It will reduce the need for inputs. So don't start from the approach that you're condemning your clients, your smallholders, to poverty because you're being organic. Start from the approach that you're teaching them to produce in an environment in which they cannot afford the inputs that would probably not work that well anyway.
Yeah.
The recipes for policy creation. Would agroforestry, I think that came from you. Yeah, that's what... There's two ways of answering that question. Yes, of course it would help. Finance poplars in wheat fields. It's easy, everybody can understand it, you can write a law about it, you can push money into it. The problem is that you're then excluding all the other ways of doing agroforestry, and as many speakers have alluded to, agroforestry is about complexity. That means we need to give the freedom to farmers to find what they do which is best for their local environment. And that means it's not a recipe. If you want a recipe, it's mix things up and think before you spray. And if you're a farmer that mixes things up and that thinks before he or she sprays, then maybe you need a little bit more policy support than somebody who's just doing monocultures. There was a question on agroforestry for recycling, sewage, etc. Yes, of course. In Europe, we call that the circular economy. We try to make sure that everything that is produced is disaggregated at the end of its useful life, and that the raw materials that it's made of go back into the manufacture of new products. And you can do that with sewage as well. Properly treated, it's an excellent fertilizer. The promotion of agroforestry, do we risk falling into the same trap as we did with the Green Revolution? I wish, man. I wish. I wish the promotion of agroforestry was so large that the whole world was covered with trees and we were sitting back thinking, oops, we made a mistake. But A, we are very, very far from being there, and B, because adding trees mimics processes that happen in nature anyway, the likelihood that we would, in a hypothetical world in which everybody was doing agroforestry, think we're making a mistake is somewhere near zero. Agroforestry and climate change and food security, well, yeah, that's what agroforestry does. Agroforestry puts carbon in the soil. It generates more food, more nutritious food. It protects you against storms and droughts. It makes you more money. It gives you more resilience, as Eckhart just said, twice the amount of maize, 3 times the amount of other crops. So don't look at agroforestry as a solution to one problem. Look at agroforestry as a Swiss Army knife. Something that can deal with an enormous range of issues that you're facing in your everyday farming life. Finally, Eckhart made that wonderful comment on profitability and resilience. I hope that Bank Windhoek will take that on board. When it's properly managed, an agroforestry system produces a lot more and a lot more resiliently than your monocrop farmers, and are therefore less of a risk than your monocrop farmers. Yes, it means you need to change the way that you evaluate those risks, and the knowledge does not exist yet inside your bank, while you have a lot of knowledge on how to evaluate the risk of monocrop farmers. But that's on you. It's on you to learn that, because there's money to be made. Because you're going to be dealing with people who are going to make more money and be exposed to less risk. So it's advantageous for the bank as well. Thank you.
Okay. Christian, do you want to comment, or are you okay?
So I think there was just the one question directed to me. And the short answer is yes, it would definitely help. Just as these type of conferences help us as well to increase the knowledge and awareness of the practice, and yes, it will definitely help.
Okay. Ladies, are there any other questions from your side? Because I'm not going to give another chance to a man to ask a question. I'm joking. Your quotas are up. Okay. How are you feeling? Are you okay? Do you want to go home? All right, I'll send you home. Let us close session 4. Give session 4 a loud hand of applause.
I must say, I'm profoundly disappointed in the ladies of Namibia. Not a single question. Is it cultural?
Yes, you can make a comment. but you need a mic. Can we get a mic here? She is the mic. No, the mics are coming.
So I just want to, throughout the day, there's been some murmurings about where's the Ministry of Agriculture. I just want to highlight that a month ago we had a conference on agroecology and organic agriculture that was supported by the Ministry of Agriculture, and it's geared towards setting up a technical working group on organic agriculture and agroecology strengthening in Namibia. So the Ministry of Agriculture is not here today because they do have another event. They are interested to learn more about these systems, and agroforestry is going to become, I'm sure, part of this. So, we just need to talk to each other more and just integrate what's been talked about today and put this into the technical working group as well. So just to say that Ministry of Agriculture is supportive of these approaches, and we just need to build a force to support them and to give advice on how to do things. Just to comment.
Thank you so much. Is that a hand? Oh, there's a hand here. Oh, now we're going to get the ladies. Is it a question? Oh, you can come up here if you want to.
I know, I'm good.
Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dana. I'm a student at the University of Namibia. It's kind of a question, but I just feel so vulnerable when it comes to funding. Standing here or being here in this meeting, I represent, let me say I'm representing my community. But going back to the community and just giving them information about the agroforest and all that, it's gonna be a boring presentation to them. They need something in practice. But us approaching the funders, they need something just not on paper, but something that is standing already. But something let me say for a garden, or maybe, for a garden to stand, they need to be a fence, for example. But we cannot have a fence just from the community people. If you say, okay, now let's come together, everyone contribute $2 to come up with a fence, it's not gonna work. But funders, they don't want to support small, not business, but small...
Small-scale farmers.
Exactly,
okay.
exactly.
All right, I hope they're hearing you. Yes, at the back, one more lady wants her voice to be heard.
So from what Patrick indicated,
yeah,
he mentioned a term of Elinor Ostrom. That has been something that we have been applying in Namibia, but I think we need to revisit it because it's
What's the terminology?
Elinor Ostrom, the design principles that ended up resulting in positive outcomes when you're managing common pool resources. So having to lead that onto what Patrick said, I highly encourage everyone else who's in agriculture, for now we refer to agriculture and forestry, to read so much about it because it's what gave birth to the systems that you are using. And if we try by all means to incorporate those systems to the existing technology that you're advancing to, it would definitely lead to positivity and positive outcomes. So this is my comment and building up on what Patrick said. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor and privilege to call on Lara Beer. She is actually heading the project which is called GMEC at the Hans Seidel Foundation here in Namibia. And I'm sure many of you have heard her when she was communicating to you to be part of this conference. And it's my honor to have her close the conference and to be able to just tell us what's next. But before she comes, while she's coming, come, Lara. Remember I told you that you need to scan your evaluation survey? I just find out it's not working. My apology. But there's good news. And please do me a favor. When you go home, we will be in touch with you because we've got all your contacts. We're going to be talking to you and pleading to you and asking you nicely to do that evaluation. It's such a short evaluation, and it will help us get more money to do things like this. With those few words, Laura, can you come and close this conference?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's still afternoon, not evening. What a great day, and I'm very convinced that you all agree on that. I'm having the honor now to close the very first agroforestry conference Namibia has seen. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, valued participants, and presenters. As we draw this enlightening conference on transformation of food systems, agroforestry as a climate-resilient practice to a close, I want to take a moment to reflect on the incredible discussions and insights we have shared today. Over the course of this conference, we have explored the pressing challenges posed by climate change, the importance of agroforestry as a viable and sustainable practice cannot be overstated. We have heard from a range of experts who have illuminated the potential of agroforestry to enhance food security, restore ecosystems, and build resilience within our communities. Our sessions have underscored the need for collaborative efforts among all stakeholders: government, private sector, NGOs, and local communities. The innovative ideas and practical solutions that have emerged will undoubtedly guide our actions moving forward. I want to express my deepest gratitude to all speakers and panelists for their invaluable contributions and expertise. Your passion and commitment to agroforestry are truly inspiring. To our sponsor, the Capricorn Foundation, and our partner, the Namibia Nature Foundation, thank you for your unvarying support. Your investment in this conference reflects a shared vision for a more sustainable and resilient future. Doufi. Doufi, our MC of today's conference. Thank you so much for guiding us through the program and keeping the time. It is always a pleasure to work with you. And, of course, a heartfelt thank you to all participants. Your engagement, questions, and discussions have enriched our experience and created a vibrant atmosphere of collaboration. As we leave here today, let us carry forward the ideas and connections we have made today. Together, we can drive the transformation of our food systems and make agroforestry a cornerstone of climate resilience in our region. Thank you all once again for your commitment, participation, and passion. Safe travels, and let's work together to bring about the change we wish to see. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and have a fabulous evening.